Hello and welcome everybody to the first Learning Live Unplugged of 2026 on this the third day of February. It is February, right? It just seems like January still. January just went on forever. Anyway, today we are talking about the attention economy. What's really going on with our focus at work? Why learning is struggling to cut through, and can L&D actually fight back? I'm not doing this alone, you'll be glad to hear. I am joined by somebody who lives and breathes attention for a living. Marketer, strategist, and all-round force of nature, Ashley Hinchcliffe from MAAS Marketing. Hi, Ashley.
Hi. Hiya. Wow, thank you for that intro. I'm going to add that to my LinkedIn profile, Force of Nature.
Force of Nature, yes, with the lovely nature backdrop as well.
That's right, exactly.
So before we dive in, can we maybe tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what do you spend your days thinking about, Ash?
Oh, so many things. So I have been a marketer for about 13 years now, and all of that has been in the learning technologies space. I started working as a marketing coordinator at a learning technologies vendor and went all the way up to CMO level. Since then, I've actually launched MAAS Marketing, and we work very closely with L&D teams to help them actually cover that gap between amazing, great learning experiences and the complete disengagement of a huge part of their workforce. And we use marketing strategy, tactics, and thinking to really employ that across campaigns, training, and so on and so forth. The crux of a lot of this is many people are struggling to connect with their employees, and everybody's trying the same stuff and it just doesn't work. So that's what we kind of want to unpick today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody on the call, as always with these sessions, if you'd like to ask a question to Ash or myself, or just give an opinion on something, that's fine too. Just please post it into the comments. We will keep an eye on those as they come in, and we'll try and respond to as many as we can. There'll also hopefully be some time at the end, depending on how long we rant on for, but hopefully for asking questions and answering them at the end. So should we start at the top then? What is the attention economy? I think when people hear this phrase, the attention economy, they think it sounds very now, it's very zeitgeisty, but it's actually not that new at all, is it, Ash?
No, yeah. Obviously, when we started talking about this, we did some research, and it actually goes back to the 1970s. So it was coined by a Nobel Prize winning economist and psychologist. His name was Herbert A. Simon, if you want to go down a wormhole with him. And one of the main key things that really resonated with Giles and myself, something that he said feels even more relevant and contextual today than it did 50 years ago, believe it or not. He said, a wealth of information creates a poverty of attention. So this was something he said in the 70s, in the early information age. Smartphones didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. Blimey, I'm not even sure satellite TV was a thing in the 70s, right? No one's using Slack. We didn't have email. So if you think about Simon's opinion in the 70s, and that attention was scarce then and was probably already people's most equitable resource, which is their time and attention, right? Imagine what he would look like now if he saw a modern workforce where, we know people's attention spans are shrinking. We can feel it. Mine is even, I find it harder to focus. I'm constantly flicking between tabs and trying to do all of the things at once. And also, there's just some stats to throw at you. Knowledge workers jump between 9 or more apps in a typical day. I can attest to that. And I expect if you're an enterprise, it might even be more than that. Many receive 100+ notifications a day. And after one interruption, it can take around 20 minutes to get back into that deep focus. So if we really think the age-old testament that our people tell us, and I hear it all the time, I don't have time to learn, to some extent, that is true. But again, today we'll talk a little bit more about how we can prove to people that their time is worth the effort.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I mean, there's another way to look at this as well, as from a biological perspective. What's actually happening in our brains when these interruptions happen. So there's this chemical in the brain. Here's a little picture of it. Isn't that nice? It's called dopamine. Oh, hello, dopamine. So basically, this is a chemical that says, "Oi, pay attention to this," and it's often called a pleasure chemical, but it's a little bit more than that. It's actually more about pull, like curiosity, magnetism, if you like. It's what grabs us. What feels important. It's what makes us think, "I'll just check one more thing." And the entire attention economy, and sadly the gambling industry, is kind of built on this instinct that we all have. So every ping, every swipe, every notification, you might also like this message. They're all designed to give our brains this kind of hit of novelty, and so you go, "Oh, this matters," and your attention follows. So, but I know the scary bit for me is that dopamine doesn't fire the hardest when we get the reward. It fires when we expect one.
Mm.
So the buzz isn't finishing the scroll, it's believing that the next post might be better. And that's why these feeds that we see on social media apps, they never end.
Sure.
That's why updates are unpredictable. That's why we keep checking back, we're refreshing our email, we're switching, because even though we know there's probably nothing new there, doom scrolling, and so over time, this actually trains our brains away from having a deep focus to be better at scanning and worse at kind of settling on something. And it's slowly rewiring how we pay attention in the first place. Really scary, I think.
Yeah. And I mean, I see this a lot. So I've got a 5-year-old. He just turned 5 over the weekend, and he's obsessed with Minecraft and Roblox and YouTube. And I have to very closely manage how much he uses those systems, particularly YouTube. I don't let him watch shorts at all, because all he's getting is constant dopamine, 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 dopamine. And then what happens is it's almost like when he stops, he's in a deficit of dopamine.
Yeah, it gets depleted.
Yeah, and he's not able to emotionally regulate in the way an adult would. And so we have temper tantrums, and he is just a little bit more grumpy, and he's not himself. And to me, that's such a simple example of what's probably really going on with us as adults, but we've just learned to regulate our behavior in a different way, which means that we are still instinctively bound by the physiology of our bodies, really. And so again, marketers and systems and design are very clever at exploiting this. You talked about gambling. It's why gamblers constantly are chasing that last big win. But I can, same with TikTok. I don't use TikTok because I know it's a black hole. I know I'll get sucked in, and so they're designed in a way to keep and retain your attention, whether that's to your detriment or not.
Yes, absolutely. So if you think about learners in the workplace, not just, anybody on social, but learners in the workplace, there are a lot of things that they have to contend with on a day-to-day basis, aren't there? So, constant interruptions, dings, pings, Slack, email, calendar pop-ups, attention is constantly being pulled and not chosen. Are you a notification kind of person, or do you just turn everything off?
No, I hate it. My phone is perpetually on silent. I have had to make sure the ringtone's on, because I was always missing calls from that. So I've changed that. But even I'm not the person who wants to have the little red icon on your phone to tell you how many emails you've got, or it ain't for me. I don't like it, because I know myself and I know it's distracting. So even notification panels, I won't have previews, so I wouldn't see what a WhatsApp text says. I can just see that someone's text me, because I know myself. So I have to gatekeep my time. But I think the point is real. And I've done a lot of research in my time at MAAS. So whenever we do a bespoke campaign, we do a lot of discovery work with our clients' employees. So I'm having direct conversations with these people, and they span different industries, they span different geographies, they work at a variety of different organizations, whether it's highly matrixed or something a little bit more straightforward, different sizes, shapes, whatever. The same points persist over and over again. I'm very busy doing my day job. How on earth do you expect me to prioritize this? And Yes, there are a lot of distractions, but I think there's also an element of a lack of perceived value from those employees. So we make time for things that we deem valuable. We give our attention to things that give us dopamine, fulfill us, reward us for some reason. So how can we start to understand that landscape that our employees are existing in to enable us to have a better connection with them and perhaps produce a more robust value proposition to that audience?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about this later in the show, guys. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy about the amount of interruptions that you can have during the day. I was just really conscious while you were talking about put my phone on silent just in case. even my car dings at me. You know, oh, there's a speed camera here. Oh, driver attention. You know, you can try and tune it all out and ignore it, but it's really, really hard.
I mean, I want whatever you've got in your car that tells you where the speed cameras are, though.
Oh, yeah, it's very, very useful, actually. So even if we respond to all these notifications, you know, what's happening there, you know? So I reckon everybody out there now watching this show, I bet some of you are doing something else right now, aren't you? I bet you've got your email open and you're checking it, or you're looking at your Instagram feed. You've got this LinkedIn show on the you're watching it and you're listening, but you're not entirely watching it. You know, I mean, we don't mind that, do we? We don't mind. It's a modern environment. But, you know, you are attempting by doing that, some of you, you are attempting to multitask. And that's something that we try and do a lot. And science tells us that we're actually really pants at this. Because there's a cost involved in switching between tasks. You know, Ash, you must have seen this, because everybody thinks that they can parallel process in the brain, but we can't do that. Actually, we switch between tasks really, really quickly, but we're not very good at doing things together. And learning can really suffer here because the brain can't do two things at once. It's going to switch between two things. Every switch comes with a cost.
Yeah, and I think, are you familiar with Kahneman's Thinking Fast and Slow?
Daniel Kahneman,
System 1 and 2. Yeah. So like that when you're talking about that, that's exactly what I think. So, and it applies in a marketing context and also in our learning product context. We're often trying, we have to hit system 1, fast thinking, quick processing, skimming over information, processing in a rapid way to allow our brains to process the high level of information that's constantly hitting it. We have to penetrate system 1 before we can click into system 2. Most learning is designed for system 2, right? We're trying to get people's attention for a period of time, keep their focus, help them learn new things, and ideally then have that starting to be applied in the workplace, changing their behaviors, so on and so forth. So we need to focus on that system 1, which is getting hammered all the time by everything you've just described and more. We're just talking about what's at work in the pings, but what about, you know, I've got a load of laundry that I left in the washing machine before I went this morning. I left my house an absolute tip because I have 2 kids and they trash it every morning. I could mop every day and hoover every day and it would still be a disaster. So it isn't just the workplace environment. Like, people don't come to work and just forget who they are and forget their identities that exist outside of the workplace and their job title. I'm just reading the comments, and Joe just said,
really walked into a lamppost.
See, we can't multitask.
Yes, we can only switch.
Yeah. So again, when we're talking about, like, the reason I do discovery with employees is hearing from the horse's mouth, hearing verbatim what's really going on for people. And they are human beings. They are your consumers, and they are consumers outside of the workplace environment. So for us to not apply the same rules that exist in our society and in real life, if you want to call it that, in our organizational environments is to do ourselves an injustice, which is, I think, where we're kind of naturally sitting right now, because there's always this tacit assumption that people want to learn, and that the sheer act of creation is enough to allure people to your new platform or your content library. And, well, the stats speak for themselves. That's not the case.
And we will talk about this again later on. There's one other thing that's just struck me as well is that, oh, what about younger workers, Gen Z, and maybe even a few years Gen Alpha, Are we, I mean, you're reasonably young, Ashley. I'm an old fart, but are the younger people able more to cope with this? Are they being conditioned in this, that we hear the word digital native, don't you? So are they more adept at split screens and infinite scrolls and all the rest of it, or are they going to suffer exactly the same as we are?
Interesting. I'm not a neuroscientist, so I think there are impacts on the brain. My question would be, first of all, I don't represent the youths. I turn 40 this year. Pray for me.
You don't look it.
Oh, thank you. And so the thing for me is, I look at Max, my son, and I see how adept he is at using devices, touchscreen, the iPad. He can navigate. He can use the Xbox controller. I mean, I was probably barely holding a spoon at 5. I bloomed late in life, whatever. But so this is their reality. I grew up in a generation where I didn't have the internet in our house until I was about 13, 14. And obviously then it was very immature. I was using Alta Vista to search and, still typing in DOS to get my Doom on my computer. And so the world that these kids are living in and growing up in is significantly different. And you have to wonder, humans are very good at adapting. And I was actually having an interesting conversation with my mum yesterday about AI. So my mum's in her early 60s. And I was reading about I was telling her about I can't remember what it's called. It was just happening over the weekend, all the AI agent chat forum. Have you seen that online?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I was talking to her about that and how kind of, Skynet's going live and we could just exploit them and all that. And she was like, I just don't really know how I feel about AI. I'm a bit older and I don't really use it and I don't really understand it. Whereas I'm in it every day now. So, and Max that'll just be part of his reality. Like anytime we watch tons of AI content on YouTube. And I have to say, that's not real. That's a video that's been created by a computer. He doesn't understand. So I think that they'll contend with different things, but their brain hasn't had to adapt in the way ours has, because we've transitioned into this digital age. They're born into it. So, it's an interesting one to consider. Will they just be insanely good at things that we're not, because it's been the fabric of their life from the outset?
Yeah, malt book. Thank you, John.
Malt book.
I said malt bot, didn't I? But similar thing,
Very surreal.
So I guess they're not going to be immune to this. They'll just suffer the same way that we do. I think for them, focus probably doesn't feel hard, but it just feels unfamiliar. So it's kind of brings us to a big statement in a way, is that I think attention then might now be the most valuable organizational resource that we have. That's a big statement, isn't it? And look, you're a marketing person. I'm a marketing person. Are we to blame for this attention crisis? Or are we just really good at exploiting it?
No, marketers are awesome. Look, I think some of the things that can be done absolutely exploit things like dopamine and reward centers in the brain. There's a fine line, I think, between activating and leveraging behavioral science and doing things that are kind of exploiting your audience to sell a product, for example. But the reality is, marketing is at the end of a very large chain, of which products and user experience are integral to the success of marketing. So ultimately, if we have a really bad user experience and the product isn't good, then the marketing won't work. So things like endless scroll, Facebook is actually the one that came up with the endless scroll. And the product has to be good and stand on its own 2 feet in order for any marketing to have any impact. So it's kind of, yes, marketing absolutely contributes to that, but I do think it is more technology and the digital age and that surplus of noise that's hitting everybody, that is where the burnout comes, I think. And unless we're very guarded and good at creating our own boundaries, then we're going to find ourselves absolutely overwhelmed with information all the time, in and out.
Yeah. And this is why, so we are kind of partly to blame a little bit, but I think we're just really, very, very, very good at earning attention, because attention does have to be earned, doesn't it? I think here we can maybe steal a few ideas from marketing and share them with the group. You know, how do marketers, I mean, not everything that we do, obviously, but you know, maybe five examples of how marketers get attention. Let's look at some obvious ones. I'm going to pop one on stage here.
You know what? I say this all the time.
Yeah, this feels like a really big one, doesn't it, for L&D? You know, I think in marketing, we kind of start from this position that people care.
Yep.
Sorry, we don't start from that position. We start from the position that people don't care. We assume that they're indifferent. We assume that they're distracted in some way, that they're even resistant quite a lot of the time. But learning often starts from a very different place, doesn't it? They start from the assumption, well, this is really important to L&D. People are automatically going to pay attention, surely.
Yes, I hear phrases like, well, they work here, they should want to learn. That word should is very loaded, isn't it? It's creating a lot of expectation that I honestly, based on the research I've done, does not exist in most employees. It's not that people don't want to develop themselves, and it's not that they don't want to progress their careers. It is that we are, L&D is starting from that mindset point of people already care. So we just need to let them know about it. You know, and this is why I have a lot of beef with Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will not come.
Yes.
End of story. So you need to do more than create the product. So marketers know, great, I've got a really good product, but it is my job to infiltrate the places and spaces that these people are. It's my job to show how this product or service resolves a problem, gives them a benefit, they gain something from, power outage. At least the internet didn't go out. But they gain something from that engagement, right? And so when I said earlier about that kind of value proposition, that's what we're missing in L&D. We're working on the assumption that most people know about us. Again, my research suggests most don't, or they certainly don't have a broad view of what's actually available, what L&D does, where to go to get things, so on and so forth. Then you add to that the fact that all of our messaging and approaches when it comes to comms and marketing is like, here's a new program. Go to the LMS. Oh, go check out this module. Hey, it's mandatory. That's not marketing. That's communications. And it's making the assumption that your audience is much further along in that kind of funnel, if you want to call it that. I won't go into that too much. But they're not. No. Everybody doesn't, you know, if you assume and nobody knows you exist, that's a much better starting point.
Yeah, it's, as you say, you've just hinted at there, it's about understanding your audience, isn't it? It's not just knowing that they're employees, but having a really deep understanding about them, you know, because marketers are kind of borderline obsessed with their audiences, aren't they? You know, that we're always doing personas and pain points and moments of frustration, whereas L&D tends to just go, here's some content, you know, and that's probably a bad thing, right? So yeah, deep audience understanding.
Yeah, again, something unfortunately that we're not always so good at. I think we're really great at bucketing people by their remit and their role, usually job title. Are they a people manager or leader, or are they doing this sort of functional job? Therefore, what skills do they need? And when it comes to L&D, that makes really logical sense. Like, you do a job, therefore you need to know B, C, and D. What that doesn't do is tell us anything about who they are as people, what their motivators are. As you already said, things like pain points, emotional drivers. These are the things that really connect with audiences. So I'd ask every single person who's sat here listening to us today, not walking into lampposts, to think about one of their strongest childhood memories. The likelihood is that memory has a very strong emotion linked to it, whether it's a positive or a negative one. Emotion is what creates resonance and connects to audiences. This is how you get fan clubs. This is why musicians, Lady Gaga has the monsters or little monsters or whatever they are. You get these cult followings from people because you're connecting with them on an emotional level. And we're not Lady Gaga, but we can still deepen our understanding of our audiences by moving away from historical bucketing, such as demographics, geographics, and job titles as our kind of personas. Like I've honestly, a client a few years ago, they were like, "Oh, we've already got personas," and I was like, "Oh, okay. Can you share them with me? I'd love to see them." And it was a spreadsheet. I'm not even kidding. It was just a spreadsheet with four boxes filled in, and it was just literally like leader, manager, like just individual contributor, and one other. And I was like, that's not a persona. So again, I think we need to educate ourselves on what actually a persona is, and more importantly, why we use them. And that again comes down to that positioning piece, that framing piece, but really talking to people's core drivers, which are relieving pain and gaining benefit from their behaviors.
And I think it's really also important to think about not just who the learner is, but what's happening around them when the learning would actually help, So in marketing, we talk about triggers, don't we? So, moments that turn an intention into an action. Motivation, surprisingly, on its own doesn't really move behavior. I mean, I can be motivated to go to the gym, but it's not necessarily means I'm going to go there.
Yep,
but
absolutely.
Context does. So, maybe instead of learning that says something like, here's a course on giving some feedback, you could perhaps design the learning to say, you're about to have your first one-to-one, or this conversation is going to be feeling really awkward. You've just been promoted and you're about to manage people. It's the same content, but it's a completely different impact because it relates to a moment in time, And I think this is where kind of marketing and behavioral science really collides, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A lot of learning is built on good intentions. This will be useful. People should know this, as you've mentioned. But that doesn't always work. So we can use some kind of brain hacks, can't we, to change behavior?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're certainly not short of passion and a real genuine focus on trying to help the people that work in our organizations. But we're very impassioned and sometimes neglect the fact that we need to get to know our audience in order to best facilitate and support them. And so we're kind of doing ourselves a disservice by overlooking this aspect. So behavioral science, again, I am not a behavioral scientist. Let's just caveat that. But there are some things that are highly effective from a marketing perspective that you can, again, easily research using your AI or Google these days. There's just so much information on there. But there's two that I think are highly effective. And one is FOMO, which is fear of missing out. So that kind of herd effect, people feeling like there's something that they're not a part of. It doesn't have to be a negative situation. You don't have to frame it like that, but it can be really effective if, for example, where it can be really contextually relevant in organizations and L&D in particular, say you want to launch a new initiative, you run a pilot, and then you get those people involved and it's a hand-picked select group of people. That's going to spread. Why wasn't I picked? What's going on? Hold on. And then when you release it further, there's already some element of, I want to be a part of that. So again, I am simplifying what is a somewhat complex thing, but we've all had FOMO. We know what FOMO is. There's also JOMO, which is joy of missing out, which I have a lot these days when people are going out night clubbing and stuff. And I'm like, no, I'll have my cup of tea. The other side of that is, let's use that same example that I've just provided in terms of you do a pilot, you get some people involved. You can then also create things like social proof, right? So social proof is crucial. It is why every business wants testimonials. It's why influencer marketing is highly effective, or used to be probably a bit more effective than it is now. It's why things like G2 Crowd, Trustpilot, and TripAdvisor all exist, because we believe the input and insights from our fellow man than a brand. So again, there's really concrete research to support this. People trust brands a lot less than they trust each other. So again, if we can use our audiences, our learners, our really active learners, as voice boxes, conduits, even a channel, because we have so few, as a way to really connect with people and substantiate that value piece, that's going to, again, have a much stronger effect than you going, yeah, but this is really great and you need to know it. It doesn't land the same. It hits different.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at a question from Kelly here. Do you have advice where if it's a new concept for Marcoms to support an L&D launch and land training initiatives? If I'm reading that correctly, I think one of the things I like, one of the hacks, if you like, is a thing called concreteness. So basically, the way around this is that the brain doesn't tend to remember ideas very well, but it remembers situations much, much better. So if you use abstract language in any of your marketing, it just slides straight off. So if you put something out to your employees, we're improving leadership capability, most people's brains will kind of go, okay, and then immediately forget it because it's abstract. But if you say, you're walking into a difficult performance conversation on Monday morning, you can kind of feel that, you can picture the room, you can picture the person, the potential discomfort. That's called concreteness. It's when learning is tied to a specific moment or a place or a decision, your brain has got something to grab onto. So for L&D, that can mean moving more towards scenarios and decisions and consequences, so not resilience training, but what to do when your confidence takes a big hit, emotional.
Yeah, because that language doesn't, people don't speak like that. Right?
No, I know
and
they
again,
don't know, but it's about story, isn't it? It's about emotion. It's about humanity. Ash, you're really good at this. You really recently posted a brilliant LinkedIn post about how to become redundant if you work in L&D. And I love
10
that.
steps to fail to get fired.
Yeah, it was really funny. But it was also really illuminating, and I thought, well, you don't always need to be funny, but you do need to be human. Yeah.
Yeah. And you always have to land it right. A lot of my clients they're in corporate infrastructure. Their brand is limited to the organizational brand. They have very few ways to differentiate themselves because they're constrained by the brand parameters that exist around look and feel, as well as sometimes even tone of voice. So you have to kind of go back to how can we disrupt I always say to my clients, I need to understand the size of the box to know where I can push the boundaries. So I need to know the box that I'm in first before I know where we can maybe push things. But there, test things. You didn't hear it from me, but I'm a really big fan of apologizing later instead of asking for permission. But even little simple tests. So send an email. So like I was just going to get it up just to show you. I won't share my screen, but I did an email last week from my database. So I've got like maybe 300,000 people in my database or something. So A/B tested it, which means all I did was wanted to change the subject line, and essentially assess which one got the most open rate, and then the rest of the emails get sent with the one with the best open rate. So I had 2. Is L&D bankrupt in the attention economy? So I was pushing this session as well as others. Or what 47 out of 50 L&D emails got wrong? Yeah. Now, which one do you think did better?
The second one.
Yes. Why?
It's a question. It invites curiosity.
Yeah. And people want to learn. They want to solve problems. Well, am I getting that wrong? What's going on? So again, if you go back to that storytelling piece that you were talking about and that emotional connection, and again, personas and pain points, if you can identify what your people are grappling with, what's causing them pain, what's keeping them up at night, it isn't the fact that they haven't completed their mandatory training. It is the fact that their manager's on their back and they missed that project deadline, and the kids still need to get their uniform ironed, and they have to go food shopping, and oh my God, we've got that meeting tomorrow and I haven't done the proposal for it. This is the mindset we need to remind ourselves of, right? So fear of missing out, FOMO, really useful behavioral science tactic. Social proof, also there. The final one I want to cover off, which kind of comes into what we have already been talking about, is loss aversion. So again, really key piece of research where a guy basically wanted to understand how people feel when they gain something versus when they lose something. So it was basically a project around, okay, we're going to give people $100 and then we're going to also take $100 away. And people felt significantly worse to lose the $100 than they did by gaining the $100. So they didn't, if we're looking at a spectrum, they felt a lot worse. People got the 100, maybe were a little bit happy, but people who lost it were really unhappy. And again, if we look at the psychology of that, people do more to avoid pain than they do to pursue pleasure. So if you want to get butts moving, understanding the organizational landscape, the organizational culture, and how learning is currently perceived and baked into that is fundamentally crucial to connecting with your audience, creating communications and marketing campaigns that actually connect and resonate. Because otherwise, we're just working from that mindset of, well, they should want to learn, and all I need to do is tell them about it. And that informs our subject lines, you know. And if that's all we're ever going to do is have kind of basic subject lines, well, no one's going to open the email then, are they? And then they're never going to read that email, and they're not going to click and go anywhere. So it's a chain of events, you know.
That's right. So these are all really good tactics from marketing to try and grab people's attention and maintain that attention. There are also, I think, some L&D responses to the attention crisis, which we haven't talked about, actually. Should we have a look at some of these? Maybe we can rate them. 10. I think the first one, and I'm going to use the surprise thing here.
What on earth is that?
That is a picture of a microscopic tardigrade or an animal. It's nothing to do with microlearning, but it's just a little illustration that if you do something surprising, people will remember it. I bet you all remember that when this session's finished. Anyway, moving on.
That'll be the key takeaway. It's not a good or a bad thing. You've proved your point.
Microlearning. So this is often, I think, the first thing that people, the first answer that people reach for, isn't it? So, look, attention is short, so let's make everything shorter. And my view is that I think microlearning helps, but it's not the whole answer, because on its own, it could end up being just one, turning one long thing that people ignore into lots of small things that people ignore. What's your view?
Sure. It has a purpose, absolutely. But I think rather than looking at the modality of delivery, for me, a starting point should be what we're trying to accomplish with that learning experience. Because again, certain skills can't be acquired from watching some microlearning. That's just the truth of it. Just in time, in the flow of work stuff, I think is great for microlearning. Like I just need to know this one piece of information really quickly. Oh my gosh, I watched this like
in the moment of need.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that can be really good. But if we're looking at establishing like new core skills, like I was just talking about the strategic marketing course that I run, and I was saying to you, I think sometimes people asking for 6 weeks of people's time, 2-hour sessions once a week, it's a big ask, but you need that level of focus in order to acquire a new skill or new skills. So I think microlearning absolutely contends with that attention economy that we've talked about in terms of fitting into people's work environments, and ultimately allowing people to dedicate small increments of time. I'd be reticent to say it's the solution to all of our problems, because I don't believe that there is adequate time committed through microlearning to acquire more robust skills, upskilling, reskilling, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's not really the destination, it's more of a delivery mechanism. But you're absolutely right. It's great at spacing ideas over time and prompting actions and thinking and things like that. Speaking of, so we'd probably give it, a 6 out of 10, say, microlearning?
Yeah, depending. I think if it's used well and with good, what's the word I'm looking for? That with good intent or
good intentions,
strategically, I think it can be really effective. But it's just not a solution to all of our nothing. We don't have a panacea. There's no silver bullet, right?
No.
The
but it is a
relevant
solution to spacing ideas over time, which is spaced learning.
Great movie.
So this one, I know. You are going to remember that. I think this one actually does work. I think this helps with the attention economy because the science is pretty rock solid, I think. And we've all heard of the forgetting curve, or that used to be called the Ebbinghaus curve. So basically means that, don't do something just once and then forget about it. That might feel really efficient, but it's terrible for your memory, So coming back to ideas repeatedly over time, that's how learning tends to stick, isn't it?
Yeah. And again, the overlap between marketing here is substantial. So we have spaced repetition in L&D. That is pedagogy's finest. Yes, we need to revisit things multiple times. And marketing has an age-old adage that's called the rule of 7. And I personally think it's outdated and needs more than 7 now, but it was created in the 20s when Hollywood was booming and the primary way to advertise was on posters and in newspapers, magazines, things like that. So primarily print. And I don't remember who basically said it, but essentially the idea that sits underneath it is that people need to see a brand or a product or your promotions at least 7 times before they'll even remember it.
Wow.
So again, that makes absolute sense in terms of why we use spaced repetition, but you can naturally see how not only could marketing and communications supplement that spaced repetition in terms of those nudges and keeping things front of mind in between those gaps, but equally, it is exactly how marketing campaigns work. It is why we use multiple channels. We don't just send an email. We send an email. We put a post on LinkedIn. We do a podcast. We write a blog on our website. We do SEO, so on and so forth, because not everyone sees everything that we do. And so to some extent, it is a numbers game. We just need to make sure the quality is there. So all of that infrastructure that we've discussed around deep understanding of our audiences, so on and so forth. If we don't have that in place, then there's next layer of how we reach them and how often we reach them. You're still already, it's a house of cards, right? So if the foundations aren't there, everything else is destined to fail from there. But that's what we neglect in L&D. We're great at understanding it from a learning perspective, but actually people still need to see stuff loads of times before they remember it. It's why everybody's had the ads where you've viewed something online and then every website you go to after that, there's a pair of shoes that you looked at. Hey, you want to buy those shoes? And they follow you around. And after a while, you probably buy the shoes because they're not doing anything. Yeah. They're just reminding you that those shoes exist. You've shown a behavior that says you're interested in that shoe. You've looked at it. And then they've gone, what we'll do is over time, continue to show you that. And so you become aware of it. Then you start looking at how much does it cost? Can I save for it? So on and so forth. We don't do that. We send we're like one and done, right? Like here's some stuff in an email that most people aren't going to open.
And then there we go. Yeah.
And that's it. And why has nobody done the thing that I want them to do?
Yeah. I'm just looking at a comment from Pippa here that there wasn't the forgetting curve sort of disproven. It's not entirely disproven, I don't think, Pippa, but it's probably an oversimplification if you think about it. It does depend a lot on the individual and the context and things like that. But there is some science to it. Like all these things, they're not 100% accurate, these theories, but they give you
the principle still applies though, right?
Yeah, they give you an idea of the way you should be heading, perhaps. There's another thing we haven't looked at, which is do I have a slide for this one? Active learning. So this is it's quite a big one, actually. I think it's all watching things, reading things, listening to things. That all feels great, doesn't it? But it doesn't always change anything, because you're not doing anything, But the problem for me with this is if you're doing something, you can still be interrupted. Your attention can wander, and that will happen, So it's not entirely an answer to the attention issue, is it, really?
No, and I think it's a difficult balance. Again, in the research I've done, a lot of people express a desire to have those face-to-face classroom-based environments. And, a twofold thing is that they get removed from those distractions and are actually able to dedicate real attention to it because they've been intentionally moved out of that space, brought into another space that says, this is where you're learning today. Cool. So that's one side of it. But then the other side is the social aspect, the networking, meeting new people within the business, so on and so forth. So again, much to the micro-learning point, this serves a purpose. So again, it goes back to my opinion of what are we trying to achieve first, and then which delivery method or modality is going to best achieve that? Because there's some scenario-based learning experiences that probably would really benefit from this type of interaction, but we can think of others in the just in time, just need it right now things where this is it feels inappropriate because it's too in-depth and not necessary. So you've got to understand what it is you're trying to get people to do before you can settle on the delivery method, in my opinion.
Yeah. And just checking the time now. We're coming up to the last 15 minutes, so we'll probably move on to the final couple of points. There is one thing that we were talking about before this session about building a learning culture, and there's some great clip out there, not clip out, stock photo of building a learning culture. How good is that? I've heard people actually say we just need to build a learning culture. Surely that'll sort all this attention business out. It doesn't really survive contact with reality, that does it?
No. And I'm afraid, so I just did a post on LinkedIn on Sunday, literally ranting about this precise thing. So what is a learning culture? What does that mean? And again, go have a look at that. There's tons of really interesting comments on it as well. So obviously I've kind of voiced my opinion, which is ultimately the culture isn't just as easy as L&D saying, well, everyone needs this mindset of wanting to learn. It's got to be a top-down thing. It's got to be a bottom-up thing. People got to walk the walk and talk the talk. The learning product and experience has to be relevant, appropriate, and up to the standard of modern world, right? Like you can't have a dusty LMS from 2010 and an outdated content library when people are looking at, HD YouTube videos and, AI bots that can churn things out in 2 seconds. We've got to align with reality here. So learning culture for me is it's not that it's a red herring, because I think the notion behind it in terms of organizations that commit to professional development and the benefits of that for both business and individual are absolutely there. But the way we go about it is just kind of saying, well, we need a learning culture. Let's build a learning culture. But we're not really if we're looking at that, that's like a change management piece. So we need to then understand the behaviors of people and what's going on and how we're actually going to affect that change. It isn't as simple as just getting a new system or content and that's the situation. So again, marketing change management needs to play a really pivotal role in that, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Actually, management very, very important there. Because I think learning culture, the idea of learning culture, really only works if it changes what gets the attention within the organization. So it's not the pings and the urgent emails and the daily updates. It's what is protected, what is rewarded, what to actually make time for. The ideal workplace might be one that chooses depth over distraction. One that protects people's attention, slows things down on purpose, makes it normal to think, makes it normal to reflect, maybe even get a little bit bored, so that learning can actually land instead of getting lost in all the noise. I have heard of, I haven't got any examples, but I've heard of some organizations introducing digital silence events. So basically 40 minutes of no emails, no Slack, no notifications, just half an hour of protected focus. Now, imagine if you were to pair that with a sort of 5-minute learning moment, not a course, not a module, but just something to think about, to practice or reflect on without interruption. I mean, that would be radical, wouldn't it?
It's you know what? It's a really lovely idea. Unfortunately, I think it's very difficult to execute at scale. So I do have an example. A client of mine has an initiative internally, which is, again, they want to embed a learning culture. They want people to understand and know that learning is a big objective for the organization, and developing yourself is crucial to the growth of the business, so on and so forth. So they have every one half day of the week, usually Friday, they have that time in the afternoon allocated to learning. So you're supposed to use that time to learn. And again, everyone I spoke to said they love the idea of it, but it's not very well gate kept. they feel selfish if they're doing that instead of supporting their team. Lots of people just don't have the downtime. They honestly then use that free time as like a mop-up session before the weekend, so on and so forth. So the reality is they want to get to here, but the culture is here right now. So just implementing initiatives that allow space for learning isn't enough if the organizational culture in terms of the day-to-day management of people, how they feel at work, so on and so forth. Do they have permission to learn? Is it safe to take time away from the workplace? Can they fail? People don't want to try new things if they're going to get bollocked because they messed something up. I'll just stick to what I know, even if it's not very efficient. So again, these are great ideas, but we also have to think about how you embed them into a business in terms of making sure they're lived reality rather than lip service to the notion of a learning culture.
So if you're going to design any kind of learning, you have to design it for the real world. You can't think of it as being just this pristine ideal world out there, where everybody just accepts the learning that is there for them, or that everybody's really quiet and they're 100% focused on everything. That's not the actual world. The actual world is just filled with interruptions. It's workload, it's digital noise, it's cognitive overload, and L&D can't pretend that doesn't exist. I'm going to move on, I think, now, because we've got 10 minutes left and we're getting some questions coming in. One thing I do want to think about, and I think we've mentioned it earlier on, is attention management is probably a core skill now for a lot of people.
Sure.
I don't think it should be a wellness add-on necessarily. I think it should be a foundational skill, because it's should
be teaching it at school.
Honestly, it's a dopamine saturated workplace, isn't it? I don't know if anyone out there in our audience today has done anything like this and they want to share it. It would be interesting. Maybe a program that teaches attention management or cognitive resilience or recovery skills, anything like that. We'd love to know you guys have done anything like that. It doesn't sound like too much of a crazy idea, and I think it would really help the workforce.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, you think about, so my stepdaughter is 15. She's always on her phone. And the way that they use their phones is really different to how, I use mine. So, we went to the pub the other day, and she just is on a call with her mates on Snapchat. No one's talking to each other. They're just present with one another. It's very, but again, I'm like, that's really weird. But then again, I spent every waking moment on MSN when I was her age. So, it's a different way of connecting with her friends compared to how I did it, but that doesn't make it wrong. So, I do think, but she's up late on her phone all the time, and they're not good. None of us are very good at managing our relationship with our devices and the technology that we use to work. So unless we have that aptitude to better manage our behavior, we're going to continue to burn our brains out of dopamine and focus on the wrong things and fragment our ability to be productive, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So looking back at some of the questions and comments, John Allen, interesting one here. He said that emotion is the thing. I facilitate games in sessions that engage emotions like the prisoner's dilemma. And those are the lessons that seem to stick longest. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Yeah. Again, it's going back to that concreteness thing I described earlier. And when the brain can almost picture itself in a situation, that resonates a lot more than an abstract idea. So, and I'm sure there's a lot of other biological reasons why the prisoner's dilemma resonates with people. But yeah, emotion, storytelling, humor, humanness.
It's crucial. Yeah, really absolutely. Authenticity as well. I think I've always wanted a client to come to me and say, look, we want to give our compliance a makeover. And I really want to do a campaign around you work here, this is part of your job, and own that narrative rather than being it's really revolutionary learning content. Everyone knows it's not. Everyone knows you just are covering your butt, and it's a butt covering exercise, and that's fine. So change the narrative, own the narrative. Actually, compliance is mandatory. It's just part of it. But guess, you can own that narrative in such a unique, interesting way that would immediately make people feel seen, rather than this constant kind of discord I think we have, where L&D's like, this is all really fantastic, and the employees are like, no, it's not. after a while, people don't want to be swindled, and they're pretty good at sussing out if something feels real or right. And so I don't think we're able to kind of like schmooze our way into people's hearts and minds anymore.
Well, there's a question here from Sarah Gates. Actually, we maybe a short answer, Ashley, because we've got 5 minutes left. But how do you go about understanding the pain points and emotional drivers of your audience, and what will capture their attention? So how do you actually find out that data?
Talk to them. Again, it sounds moronic when you say it out loud, but the amount of my customers that aren't having direct conversations with the audience they are trying to connect with is staggering. Have focus groups, get some qualitative information, and don't just ask them about their learning experience. Ask them about what it's like to work at your organization, what's keeping them up at night, how, is their manager bought into what's going on? Yes, ask them a bit about learning. Do they know what's available? Do they know where to go? What do they find difficult? What do they like? But look at that broader culture piece, because that's the market that you're going to then be hitting into. So you need to understand the level of noise and saturation. You need to understand the audience sentiment towards your product, your learning, in order to really build out compelling messaging and frame things in a way that talks to people's challenges.
Yeah, that's very good.
2 minutes on personas.
Yes, amen to this, Ashley. We need to keep it simple. Yeah, absolutely. So, Ashley, you can help with all this. Anybody who is interested in working with Ashley with the LPI on a course about marketing, learning effectively and boosting employee engagement and cutting through all this noise, you can work with us and find out more about this course. I'm going to try and put a link into the comments if I can do that at some point.
Yeah. And it's a course that's been built on the learnings that I've had over the 6 years working with L&D. So it's really focused on building foundational knowledge and skill when it comes to marketing. We look at how to do personas, marketing mindset. We look at marketing strategy, and this all culminates into creating your own learning campaign for your organization. So you have something really real to apply and use straight away. It gets assessed by me. I give you feedback and stuff. So it's kind of got the MAAS seal of approval. But more than that, you have a constant opportunity to apply what you're learning. So I've tried to apply the learning science to my marketing world.
No, it's very, very good. I can't post a link in for some reason. I don't know why. I will maybe put it in after this session finishes, because all the chat is saved against the event anyway. So I'll pop it in there. And
you probably have to go onto the LinkedIn chat to do it.
Yeah, something technical.
Fun.
But
no.
I'll send out an email to everybody afterwards anyway. So okay, so to summarize then, I think the attention economy is pretty much optimized for speed, isn't it, and pleasure and consumption. And L&D really needs to think about a way of counterbalancing that. How do we do that? Well, we can optimize more for the depth, for meaning, for mastery. We don't win necessarily by shouting any louder. We can't compete with that, but we can be shorter, we can be smarter, and we can be better timed. And we can, let's be honest, steal from marketing as well, unapologetically. So, because we've got lots of tricks up our sleeve to help with that. And thank you. Yes,
we've got the battle wounds, right? We've done the experimentation. We've got the learnings from it. Big borrow and steal, I think.
Yeah. And apparently there's, I think it's John Allen or Jeremy Snell, one of them has created a guide on building mono attention. I'm going to have a look at that later on. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Ash, thank you so much for joining us and coming up to the top of the hour now. Thank you, everyone on the call as well, for your time and your attention with us today.
Did we keep it?
We will see you very soon for another Learning Live Unplugged. But until then, thanks for joining. Have a great rest of the day, and bye-bye for now.
Bye. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.